Choice Home Care and Hospice present Choices to Benefit the Aging with your host, Joe Urrutia.
Welcome to Choices to Benefit the Aging. I'm Joe Urrutia, Community Senior Service Coordinator for Choice Hospice and Home Health. Today's guest, we have George Perez. He's a licensed master social worker and he works for Choice Hospice. Welcome to our program, Choice.
Hello, Joe.
George, advanced directives. This is a subject to me that comes very close to heart because we'll be talking about advanced directives and DNR, which is do not resuscitate. And I myself, working in hospice and going to educate the families about the hospice Medicare benefit, that is something that's always the part of what I'm talking about mostly is the do not resuscitate. As far as the advanced directives, that's when you as a social worker comes in and starts to help families with educating them about these type of documents out there. So I want to ask you, George, what is an advanced directive?
Well, Joe, you know, a lot of people really, you know, this is a subject that, you know, first off, you know, some people don't like to talk about, and a lot of people just, you know, aren't aware that, you know, there's such a thing as advanced directives. You know, in recent years, we've had a lot more publicity about situations, you know, where advanced directives come into play. You know, the TV, the movies, you know, have kind of highlighted this a little bit more. Advanced directives are typically a set of 3 documents that people use to, you know, right now while they're alert and able to voice their wishes. They can execute one of 3 different advanced directives so that in the event that some catastrophic, you know, situation should happen to them, that people would know what they want in terms of their health care. So this is very, very important documents. The first one is called a living will or a directive to physician, and that's basically where you tell the doctor, you know, if I have a terminal condition and I'm not able to make decisions on my behalf, this is what I want you to do. And there in this document, you indicate, you know, I want you to do everything to keep me alive, including putting me on life support systems, ventilators, you know, etc. Or you can indicate, don't do anything for me. You know, if I am terminal and I don't have any hope of getting better, just, you know, make me comfortable and let me go. And so, you know, that's an important, you know, decision that people need to make and need to voice. The second advanced directive is called a medical durable power of attorney. The purpose for this document is in the event that you, again, you know, and it basically says, doctor, if I have a terminal condition and I am not able to make decisions for myself, this is the person or persons that I'm designating to make decisions on my behalf. And so it becomes a very important legal document so that somebody can make decisions about surgery, about, you know, healthcare and so forth in the event that, you know, that you're not able to because of, you know, whatever your medical condition is. The third document is what is called a Texas. Well, you know, every state has its own laws about resuscitation, and in Texas, you know, the state of Texas has a very specific document that they put out that they like to be used for a Texas out of hospital do not resuscitate order. In Texas, the law says that, you know, right now you and I are having a conversation, and let's say that you collapse on me, okay? I'm trained in CPR, so, you know, I have to evaluate to see whether you have a pulse or not. Then I have to evaluate whether you're breathing or not, okay? If you're not, then the state of Texas says that I have to initiate CPR or cardiopulmonary resuscitation and call 911. okay, the purpose for the CPR, most people, don't have a really good understanding as to why that happens. Just real briefly, the heart is a pump, okay, and all our body needs blood to, for all our cells in our body to function, okay. When the heart stops, then you're not circulating the blood through the system. And that's why, in the blood you have the nutrition. When we eat, it gets broken down, and you have, the sucrose or the sugary substance that the body uses to function, and then the oxygen, okay? So with the purpose of CPR is to manually pump your heart so that it's continuing to circulate the blood through your system, so that even though your heart isn't pumping, you're still getting oxygen and nutrition through all your cells in your body, especially the cells in your brain, okay? Once the brain cells die, the person, dies.
The point of return.
The person dies because, and even if you don't, expire,
Yes.
If you're without oxygen for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and they do manage to bring you back, if you're not, circulating the oxygen, you could still have severe brain damage to where even if you get resuscitated, you're not going to be functioning, very well. Because once the brain cells die, whatever activity, whatever information, whatever, action they carried out, it's gone, and so memory, body functions, everything that is associated with who we are could be severely impacted.
So they cannot be restored.
Right.
The cells, okay.
And some people say, I don't want to be resuscitated. If my heart stops and I stop breathing, then I've died and you gotta let me go. And so in Texas, in order for us to do that, then we have to have the person sign a document indicating that that's their wishes. It has to be witnessed by two individuals that are not related and not treating the individual. And it has to be signed by the physician, who is acknowledging that those are the wishes of the individual. Once those have taken place, then the Texas out of hospital DNR has been executed, and then if your heart stops and you stop breathing, then you don't have to get CPR. Actually, you're not going to get CPR because those are your wishes.
I'm glad that you explained about the CPR and the brain cells dying. So is that considered, when the brain cells die, it's the patient's brain dead?
Well,
George?
Basically, if typically, they look at your heart function.
Okay.
If your heart's not beating, and if they're going to do aggressive measures and try to resuscitate you after a specified period of time and several attempts, if your heart doesn't continue, then it's pretty much pointless to do anything. So you basically have expired, and that's when you see on TV, the person has coded, because your heart doesn't start anymore.
Okay. Who again would execute the advance directive?
Well, it's important that every individual, should have these advance directives. A lot of people think, well, I'm young, I'm not going to need them. And that's not true. I mean, who's to say, when something's going to happen? And you see it daily. I mean, there's traffic accidents, there's, work in the industrial, incidents where, somebody gets shocked or something happens. And so it could happen, at any time.
Okay.
And if you haven't discussed it with anybody, if you haven't executed any of the directives, then, who's going to know what your wishes were in terms of, whether you wanted, aggressive care or you didn't. So you have to, and it's really everybody should have an advance directive.
George, I was just kind of thinking, somebody that has a life-threatening diagnosis, do you recommend that they start looking at some of these?
Well, you
Also,
know, everybody should have one, but if if you have a medical condition, what is considered a terminal medical condition, and it could be a variety of different things. Some people have cancer,
okay.
and the oncologist has determined that there is no further treatment for that condition, and so then they consider you terminal. You may have a pretty severe heart condition that is no longer operable, and sometimes, it's, if they operate on you, then the chances is 100% that you're not going to survive it. So, the cardiologist will tell you in that instance, there's no point to get aggressive care. So that's a terminal condition. Sometimes, your lungs have been damaged severely. You developed a condition such as COPD, where your breathing capacity has severely diminished, emphysema, there's a number of different conditions that can cause that. And so again, there's nothing that can be done. And so, people that have been identified with a terminal condition most definitely should have, because we never know when our time's going to come, but when you've been diagnosed with a terminal condition, you know that it's a certainty that it's coming, within a relatively short period of time. And so, yeah, most definitely people should, especially under those circumstances, execute one of these advance directives so that their wishes and their dignity, can be respected when the time comes.
George, and you've worked in a hospital setting. I've known you working for many years in a hospital type of setting, and you working with the sick, and have you come across patients that already have all this paperwork and that it just makes it easier on the rest of the family members that, these have been his wishes and now we
Joe,
want to...
I've seen both instances, and let me tell you, when somebody has executed an advance directive, it is a beautiful thing to see, because everything comes together. The person comes in, they're diagnosed, somebody comes in and says, I have, medical power of attorney, who you're going to be, dealing with, and so then the doctors, the nurses, all the medical personnel know exactly who is going to be authorized to make those decisions. I've seen it where it's been pretty, difficult in a couple of instances where you have a person who comes in, basically a John Doe, no information on them, severely, condition that is, pretty terminal, and so you have to make a lot of decisions. How aggressive are you going to get? Are you going to put him on a ventilator? Are you going to keep him on a ventilator? If somebody's on a ventilator in the intensive care unit for, more than 21 days, you have to do a tracheotomy because, they can't be there, so then that's going to present a whole set of treatment options for that individual, even once they get better, and if they're going to get better, and then so, there's an ongoing escalation of different decisions that have to be made, and when you don't have anybody that can step forward and say, this is what we're going to do, then it makes it very, very difficult for the medical staff. Now, let me give you another one that's also very heartbreaking, okay? Let's say that you go into the hospital, you have a girlfriend, because you're divorced, and you have adult children, and then you have your mom and dad, and then you have, your nieces and nephews who treat you, like a dad. And you have a severe condition that, we're going to have to make some very serious decisions about what kind of care you're going to get. Who do we listen to? Your girlfriend doesn't have a legal standing because she's not married to you. Your ex-wife doesn't have a legal standing because she divorced you or you divorced her. Okay? Your adult children, they could have standing. Your parents could have standing, okay? But who do we listen to, especially if, your children want, Dad, let him go. you know, and mom and dad, no, mijito, you know, I mean, we gotta do everything, you know, we gotta fight. You know, your nieces and nephews that treat you like, you know, like a dad. You know, so there's conflict, okay? Who do we listen to? You know, there has to be one designated decision maker. And if you know, there's a reason why you know, you live with your girlfriend. You know, I mean, you haven't gotten married for whatever reason, but she should have standing, but legally she doesn't because you're not married. So if you execute a medical power of attorney and you designate her as your medical power of attorney designee, then she has 100% standing over anybody else because you chose her in a legal document to make those decisions for you.
George, again, we're going to go back with your experience working in hospital settings and patients that have been diagnosed with a terminal illness. And do you find a lot of the times that patients that have already their DNR, their advanced directives in place, that they have a peaceful, a better quality of life with their, or a peaceful death? Because they're not going through a lot of the evasive. What do you think about that? Or
well,
what can you share with us?
You know, okay, if you're in a coma, Joe, you know, it's not going to matter a great deal to you, you know, what they've done to you, whether they've done, you know, the full boat or whether they've let you go. It's important for your loved ones that are going to stay behind, you know, because if there's so much conflict and turmoil, like the scenario that I just presented, you know, those folks are going to have to live with that decision, you know, and so there's going to be a lot of guilt. There's going to be a lot of anger. There's going to, you know, there's a lot of emotions that go on. I mean, you know, when you talk about the, you know, the death and dying process, and you know, Kubler-Ross's, you know, stages of grieving and so forth, you know, there's so much dynamic that goes on, you know, and having, you know, decisions made up front, you know, and taking all that away from them, you know, all that burden away from them when you've made your own decision in terms of, you know, you already have a peace of mind in terms of whatever happens to me medically, I know that I'm covered because I've already addressed, you know, what my wishes are. You know, everybody knows what I want done. And then it's very important for the ones that stay behind, because then they don't have to deal with the guilt. They don't have to, you know, it's like, you know, it's beautiful. You know, Joe wanted me to do this, and I was able to honor his wish and grant him what he wanted, and this is what he wanted, and so they feel good about it. You know, so they're at peace with that. You're at peace because you made your decision, and you hope that, you know, whoever you designate is going to follow your wishes, and that's, you know, the purpose of why, you know, these documents are executed. And so, yeah, it does make for, you know, a better transition in terms of, you know, exiting, you know, this life. It does make it, you know, a lot better.
A lot easier. I had an experience with one of our hospice patients that were in a nursing home, and one of the family members, at the time this patient had been in a coma for about 7 years, and I can recall that she was saying that when they had diagnosed her, she really wanted to put her on DNR, and she did not want to do any type of enteral feedings for her mother. And she says, you know, I wish at the time, if the family would have known about these type of forms and medical directives and DNRs, that they would have had everything in line. She says they put her on the enteral feedings, and she lived for 7 years in a coma state. And she says, you know, that was a worst mistake they could have made, putting her on a feeding tube. If they would have just allowed the process, that, you know, she would have done.
Nature to take its course.
Again, yes, nature to take its course. So,
you know, taking that scenario, Joe, you know, I mean, and you see this all the time, and you know, I mean, it's an ethical, you know, dilemma, and it's also an economic one, because, you know, it's not easy and it's not cheap to take care of these folks, you know, in you know, who linger in nursing homes or you know, institutions for years and years and years. If they would have talked, you know, with this person if this person would have executed one of the directives and let the family know, hey, I don't want to be kept alive in this artificial state, then, chances are there wouldn't have been a need to, for them to remain in a coma, okay? Now, once they have been, in a coma state, other complications arise, and then you have to consider, do we feed, do we provide nutrition, hydration, do we put fluids in there? Because let's face it, if you don't eat and you don't drink, you're gonna die, okay? And so it's again, this dilemma that families are faced with, of making that decision to let you die. I mean, that's bottom line, that's what it is. And so that's what makes it so heart-wrenching, because it's a decision that you have to make to let somebody die, and you shouldn't have to be placed in that situation if you execute an advance directive.
George, I was going to, we were talking about the living will or the directive to physicians, the medical power of attorney, and the do not resuscitate. Do you need a lawyer to execute these documents?
Joe, the beautiful thing about these documents is that you really do not need to seek any legal advice or pay, because I mean, lawyers, you can go to a lawyer and they'll gladly, charge you whatever their fees are to do this, and they can do them, but you don't have to. These documents are public domain, and they're legal documents, okay, even though they're not executed by an attorney. For instance, the directive to physician. It's a very simple one-page, document that has already been pretty much, done for us, and it basically, you just put your name, check, what you want, and you can add a little bit more if you want, but basically, it's all laid out. I don't want aggressive measures. I don't want to be put on, or I do everything for me, and those wishes are going to be followed because that's what you want, and so it just basically, you sign it, and it's witnessed, and that's it, okay? The deal of medical power of attorney, same thing, you indicate there, this is who I'm designating,
okay.
This is their name, their address, their phone number, and you have the witnesses.
It is very user-friendly. I'm looking at this one here. It's
and you're done. And it's a
pages,
legal
back to back.
document. Yeah. And there's 3 pages because one of them, you have to be advised, like if I'm going to ask you to be my designated power of attorney, then you need to know, what your role's going to be in this. So there is a companion document that kind of gives you some information and some guidance in terms of, what's expected.
On the do not resuscitate,
Mm-hmm.
George, which is a DNR, is this engraved in stone where the person says, okay, I already signed it and this is it? I can not...
Everybody has that question. Joe, I signed that and I'm doomed for life. No,
Okay.
You have the right to execute any one of those 3 documents or all 3 documents, and you also have the right to revoke them at any time, as long as, you still are of sound mind, you can revoke them, okay?
Okay.
Once you are no longer capable of making decisions, you're gonna need, the directive to physician, because people are gonna want to know what you want done, and then you're gonna need the medical power of attorney, because that's gonna tell us who's gonna make the decisions. On the out of hospital do not resuscitate order, that one, it can still be revoked, but it can only be revoked by the parties who originally signed it. So if you signed it as a patient,
Yes.
It's your document, you can revoke it. If you signed it for your mom, then you can revoke it for your mom. If the witnesses were present, they could have a say-so, but usually it's the patient is the the person who either has a power of attorney who executed it, or the approved family member, and then the physician. But the physicians usually will not take off a DNR. But yeah, I mean you can change your mind at pretty much at any time, except once they've started CPR, then you can't change your mind. You can't say, well, no. Actually, you could if you were conscious enough to say stop. But at that point you're not gonna be. So you're gonna get the full.
George, I'm looking at your do not resuscitate, and it is requiring physicians.
You have to have a physician sign that one.
So it would be they would need to talk to their primary physician at that point.
It's always good that you actually discuss all of your directives with your physician if you've executed them, and you let them know, doctor, I have a directive to physician, I have a medical power of attorney, and I want to execute a Texas out of hospital do not resuscitate order. Will you sign it for me?
Okay.
And the doctor, I'm sure, would be more than glad to discuss with you, your wishes, and that's also very helpful, because if he's going to be treating you at the hospital and you've told him what you want, then he's going to know firsthand, what your wishes were when you were still able to make those decisions.
Who should you select as the person to designate for your power of attorney?
My recommendation, Joe, is that you'll be very selective, because I'll give you a for instance, and my family is gonna kind of hate me for this, but I was having a discussion with my son and my wife one evening. We were just talking about advanced directives, and my son said, that I do not want to be resuscitated. I want to be cremated. And so he's telling me all these things, and I said, okay, but you better have a medical power of attorney, because if you put your wife, do you trust that your wife is going to honor your wishes? Do you trust your mother that she's going to honor your wishes? They're going to be very emotional and very sentimental, and those two individuals are not going to want to let you go. So, do you have a good friend who you trust. Who is going to, so it really is you who needs to decide who you feel is going to honor your wishes, and actually, when that decision needs to be made is, will they make that decision, or are they going to back off and still do everything that you didn't want them to do?
George, I want to thank you for today's topic regarding the advanced directives and the DNR. If they need any documents in the future, and they can always call Choice Home Health and Hospice at 588-8382. You can ask to speak with George Perez or myself, Joe Urrutia, and we can provide you with some of these documents in the future. They're very user-friendly, correct, George? And if you have any questions, please give us a call. I want to thank everybody for watching us today on Choices to Benefit the Aging. Please look at your Southwest Senior magazine for weekly topics regarding health issues that we will bring to the table, and physicians that will be coming on our program in the near future. Again, I want to thank everyone for watching us today, and God bless you.
Choices to Benefit the Aging has been brought to you by Choice Home Care and Hospice. For more information on this program, go to El Paso Southwest Senior Magazine at www.southwestsenior.com. Furniture provided by Copenhagen, 6550 North Mesa.